Westside Jeff is the name, and for Chris. Chris has taken the night off. He'll be back tomorrow night. You know my story. I just get a chance to sit in here and fill in for Chris Krok, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I just provide you my shtick is pretty simple. I just provide you common sense opinion to current events. I follow the news. I watch many news channels. I analyze it. I find myself having an opinion. I get a chance to share it. And today I've got a buddy of mine in town. He came down and decided to spend some time the weekend here in Dallas. And I said, come on down to the studio and join me. His name is B.J. Schuerger. It's he owns a law firm. It's called Schuerger Shannarah. He's got an office here in Dallas, so he wanted to come down and check out the facility. It's his firm is Schuerger Shannarah. His website is warfor214.com. You can always reach out to him. We've been talking a lot the last hour and a half or so, just about all the topics we're going to talk about tonight. But I want to lead with Memorial Day. Today's Memorial Day, and one of the things that's interesting, BJ, you and I talked earlier about the one thing you don't say is Happy Memorial Day, because it's not a happy occasion. Memorial Day is a day that we honor and we celebrate the lives of those who have given the ultimate sacrifice and died in the line of duty and died while serving our country in the military. And I had to think about this. I don't have any immediate family members or anybody really close to me that has died in the line of duty. Do you?
Yeah, I don't either, Jeff. And I know the sacrifices that families that I do know who have loved ones who have died in the line of duty. This is definitely a day to take solace in that and reflect upon the freedoms that they sacrificed for, that we sit here today and take advantage of.
We get a chance, you and I sit here and visit on the radio and talk about free speech and give our opinions on things because of those who have done exactly that and provided for us.
You know, Netflix had an amazing World War II show on that went through in New Color video from back in World War II, which you really got to see the sacrifices that our countrymen made just in all the wars that we've been in, that we've been sent over to. We can never take for granted being in the line of fire, and particularly as we talk about the wars that are going on today. And what the United States should and should not be involved in.
I have a brother, Rick, who served in Vietnam, and he was shot in Vietnam. He's got a Purple Heart, but he survived that. Unfortunately, a gentleman that was in the foxhole next to him did not. He took a bullet to the head, and the young man's noggin came off, and my brother was right there, and my brother still today feels guilty because that soldier was married, his wife was pregnant, and did not know it, or never met the baby because he didn't survive it. My brother still today, who has never been married, never had kids, still today says, I should have taken that bullet. He had something to live for. I didn't. And my brother still has guilt. If you have a family member or a loved one that has paid the ultimate price while serving in the military, I'd love to hear from you. It's a great way to honor that person. It's a great way to honor the family, and a great way to honor that service that they've done. So if you have a family member or a loved one who served and paid the ultimate price, I'd love to hear from you, and it's a great way to honor and memorialize them on Memorial Day. My phone number, 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. Again, if you have a loved one, if you have a family member, if you have a friend, somebody that it's close to you, that you know their story, I'd love to hear their story. It's a great chance to honor and to recognize that person who made the ultimate commitment. I don't. BJ, you said you don't either, right?
Yeah, no, I don't, fortunately.
800-288-9227 is the phone number. I'm Westside Jeff, and for Chris Krok. The other thing interesting, you and I both played golf today. We didn't play together, but we were played moments apart from each other. And in the middle of my round, my buddy Mike said, hey, Bill Walton died today, which is interesting. Bill Walton, 71 years old, died of cancer. I didn't even know he had cancer. He's a NBA Hall of Famer. He certainly helped define redefined the game. He moved from a player into the seat as a broadcaster. Walton was the NBA's MVP in 77 and 78 season, a two-time champion, and a member of both NBA's 50th anniversary and 75th anniversary teams. He played for John Wooden's UCLA Bruins, becoming a Hall of Fame center for the NBA career there, and he was a stud. Your reflection on Bill Walton as a basketball player?
Yeah, Bill Walton was one of the greatest passing centers in the game. He really redefined the rebound and pass down the floor offense that Jack Ramsey perfected in that Portland Trail Blazers offense when they drafted him as the first pick in the 1974 draft, and really redefined the game from a fast break perspective. Unfortunately, Bill Walton was heralded by injuries his entire career. Bones in the feet, devastating injuries that any player nowadays can barely play through. And the fact that he lasted all the way to the 1986 Boston Celtics championship run is amazing. But, Bill Walton had an impact on the game as an announcer. I mean, his voice was synonymous with NBA and college basketball as we moved into the 21st century. And the fact that he was around and really a man before his time in terms of his abilities on the court.
He was, like you said, a great passing center. He redefined the game from that angle, and will always be known as a Los Angeles as a Laker, and certainly a broadcaster. I'd be curious to see if people recognize him more as a player or as a broadcaster.
Probably as a, it's interesting. His playing run. His impact on the game only lasted a few seasons because of those injuries. He got traded from the Portland Trail Blazers. The LA Clippers was never the same with the foot injury, and then was traded to the Boston Celtics, became the sixth man of the year in '86. I think as an announcer, he would probably be more widely well known by the people and not as a player, even though he was a great player that moment in time that he was able to play.
I agree with you. I think it'll also be dependent on the age of the person, too. Remember, when he played, basketball games were on television. We didn't have the plethora of networks that we do today. There were 3 channels, and not all the games are on TV. So his real fame was from a broadcaster, because not every game was televised, but certainly they are now, and certainly the postseason. Bill Walton, dead at 71. I didn't even know he had cancer, so interesting. On the other side of this, in about 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about some of the storms that hit up in Valley View, and one of the unfortunate things about that, above and beyond loss of homes and businesses and the number of deaths, but there's another issue up there that we need to address next. I also want to talk about tomorrow, and a big day coming up tomorrow in New York with the Trump trial. We'll vet that out in a few minutes. That's BJ Schuerger Shannarah. I'm Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and FM 93.3. I'm Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Krok. Chris is back tomorrow night. In the newsroom, my buddy Sean Allen. Sean and I were just talking during the break about some of the news items coming up. He's working hard on some bottom of the hour stuff. One of the stories I think he's working on, he was talking about some of the damage going on up in Valley View, which I'll get to in about 45 seconds. And joining me also, my producer, Garrett Tarango. Thank you for the partnership, for being there and making for a good radio show. Also joining me in town over the weekend is my buddy BJ Schuerger. He lives up in Ohio. I'm born and raised up in Columbus, Ohio. He still lives there. He came down for the weekend. I asked him to come down and join me in the studio, which he did. I call him BJ, but it's Robert Schuerger. He is a partner in Schuerger Shannarah. It's a law firm here in Dallas. He's got offices around, how many states are you in now?
Yeah, we're in 11.
11 states. You got an office here in Dallas. You wanted to visit and see what's going on down here. If somebody wants to reach out to you, they can do that at warfor214.com. We talked a moment ago about the tornadoes that hit up in Valley View over the weekend on Saturday. Tornadoes tore through North Texas, killing 7 people, injuring over 100 people up there with the outbreak Saturday night. I've never lived through a tornado. Have you been in a tornado?
Yeah, I'll tell you, growing up where I did was right in a tornado area. So, once every 2 or 3 years, we would be running to the basement and the tornado would be coming through. One time, a tornado did touch down in the front part of our property, and it just take the trees.
Were you
right
there when it happened?
Oh yeah, we were.
What did it sound like? Everybody always talks about what it sounds like.
It sounds like a train coming through. I mean, it's deafening noise, and it sounds like a train literally rumbling right through, with that air sucking up. It's an incredible force to witness. I was a young boy at the time, so I definitely was scared out of my mind in the basement and hearing that. Luckily, it bounced in front and bounced just over our house, and then kept going on into the other fields. So we were lucky.
Wow. 3 minutes. I'm going to ask him. We'll talk a little bit about tomorrow. Is a big day in New York as the Alvin Bragg case against Trump. Closing arguments are coming up. We'll talk about that. He's an attorney by trade. He can shed some light on that. I want to get into that in 3 minutes. We're talking about tornadoes. I've never experienced a tornado myself, and I don't want to, but have you ever seen one live? You said you were one went over the house, but have you ever been out and seen one coming at you?
No. I was never. Yeah, I've never been close enough to capture it on camera.
You don't want to.
Yeah.
Don't get out with your camera phone
unless you're a storm chaser and have the guts and the glory to go for it.
One of the problems in Valley View, and watching that video up in Valley View where the tornadoes hit down, and if you're not familiar with Valley View, it's an area. It's about 60 miles north of downtown Dallas and just west of Dallas. The tornado obliterated that area. It's amazing looking at the drone footage up there. But one of the things I did see on WFAA site, one of our partners, FAA, posted a story about the number of, they asked us to share that, and said their crews are continuing to see dogs that were separated from their families at the tornado in Valley View, Texas. And the photo they shared was on Green Meadow Drive, one of the hardest hit areas, and it shows dogs that are separated from their owners that who knows if their owners are alive and if they've got a home or not. Dogs, let's not forget the animals.
Yeah.
Animals, and animal shelters are going to be taking them in. If you're thinking about adopting an animal, this would be a good time to get into one of the shelters up there and check those out, because there's a lot of dogs. In addition to the deaths of the people and the destruction of the homes, the animals have gotten misplaced, and let's not forget the animals.
As a dog owner myself, I can empathize with seeing a dog lose their home and be wandering out there, hopeful to get a home. Hopefully they get to the animal shelter and somebody can give them that warmth back, and hopefully their owners find them and are alive and safe.
That's BJ Schuerger. I'm Westside Jeff. Schuerger is Schuerger Shannarah Law Firm. He's an attorney. We'll get into this continue this in a matter of minutes. But tomorrow is a big, big day in New York, because closing arguments start tomorrow in the Trump. It's what they call the hush money trial, but it's really, the media portrays this wrong, because it's not a hush money thing. This trial, if you followed it closely, you know a little bit about it, and if you haven't, what you're not understanding, this isn't about did he have sex with Stormy Daniels. It's not about that. This isn't about unfair. This isn't about something he did illegal. This is a case of election law. Right?
Yeah, Jeff. The nuances of this lie underneath the definition of election interference. The salacious headlines about sex with a porn star are what I think the media utilizes to sell newspapers and
ratings,
and ratings and pump
clickbait
and pump interest in the in the show. But the actual underlying facts are around a much more nuanced area of the law about whether Donald Trump's use of campaign money to pay Michael Cohen equaled election interference, utilizing those dollars, because they were federal election dollars, to pay Stormy Daniels off. That's really what the prosecution, when it's all said and done, that's what they're trying to say. And the defense side and Donald Trump's is saying that it was not anything to do with an election. It had to do with trying to protect a story from hurting the integrity of their family.
Let's break this down about 7 minutes. We've got to hit a quick break, and then again at the bottom of the hour, we've got Sean Allen in the newsroom with the latest news, and then we'll check in again with Brad Barton on what's going on with weather across the area to keep you up to speed. Bottom of the hour news coming up in about 3 minutes with Sean Allen. On the other side of that, BJ Schuerger and I will continue the conversation about the Trump trial, because tomorrow's a really big day for a bunch of reasons. We'll break it down for you coming up in about 7 minutes. I'm Westside Jeff in for Chris Krok. That's BJ Schuerger. We're on News Talk 820 WBAP and FM 93.3. I'm Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Krok. I've got a buddy of mine, BJ Schuerger, from, he lives up in Ohio. I was born and raised up in Ohio. He came down for the weekend and said he wanted to catch up. So I said, come on down to the studio and join me. So he did. He came down to the studio, and here we are sitting here. Garrett Tarango, my producer. Thank you, Garrett. Good to have you. And good night to talk about a lot of things going on. My story is pretty simple. I just give you a common sense opinion on current events. So I follow the news, catch up on what's going on, and have an opinion. Tomorrow is a pretty big day with what's going on up in New York, and that is closing arguments in the Trump, what they call the Trump hush money trial. But it's not really about hush money. It's not about him having sex with some stripper. It's not about him having an affair on his wife. Has nothing to do with that. That's not what the charges are. This is not a case of did he do it? Did he have sex outside of his marriage? Did he, what did he do? This is a case of federal election law. There's something called the Federal Election Commission that oversees that. BJ Schuerger is an attorney. He is on top of this and studies that and follows that. Your take on this is not really, that's what I said. This isn't about did he or didn't he. This is a federal election violation charge.
Yeah, and in the essence of it, it's a very boring case when you start to look at the X's and O's of the underlying issues that they're trying to discuss. One of the big aspects of what the jury is going to take a look at, all these past 5-6 weeks, we've seen a lot of stuff thrown at the jury. Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels. You've had a number of different high-profile witnesses that have said a lot of different things. The bottom line comes to whether the jury believes that what Donald Trump did with the federal money for his campaign would be considered election interference. The direction that the judge is going to give the jury is going to determine a lot.
That's everything.
Yeah.
That's going to be everything.
That's going to determine exactly what the jury can take a look at. And if you understand that, I can understand why Donald Trump's side might have some angst, particularly if they think that Judge Merchan is been overly harsh on their side, because if he gives a very narrow definition to the jury, regardless of what evidence was put forward. That's all that the jury is going to be able to take a look at when they make a decision on guilty or not guilty.
In the jury, there's 12 people in the jury, right? And there's two backups, is that right?
Correct, 2 alternates.
So there's a 12-person jury, and what we need out of this is they need all 12 jurors to agree that he's guilty or not guilty on those charges, right?
Correct.
And there's like 30-some charges, if I remember right. So they can go through and say he's guilty on charge 1, but not guilty on charge 2, and go through every one of those, right?
Yeah, if you look at the charges, a number of them are pancaked. They're almost the same charges, but what they're accusing it of happening a number of different times. Sometimes when the prosecution puts or the state puts charges together, if you've done mail fraud once, but you've done it 30 times, they don't charge you with just one instance of mail fraud. They'll charge it to you for 30 times, 30 counts of that. I think that's kind of what you have here in terms of, when people always say that Donald Trump has been, has 91 charges against him, you really have to parse through that and figure out, is there really 91 charges, or are there 3 distinct charges that they've just, recharged many different times, but it's the same charge?
And what makes this so tough is this. It's all about election interference. That's really what the charge is. And it's an FEC, or Federal Election Commission, ruling in there, right?
Yeah. So
comes into play.
So in essence, this case, it could have easily been a state case, because the original charges would have been that it was a business concealment, meaning that he paid Michael Cohen money for something that Michael Cohen reported that he didn't pay Stormy Daniels, but it was for something else. That would have been an initial state charge. But what happened was the prosecution took a look at it and attempted to, for whatever strategic reasons, to make it a federal law by entangling and saying because it was federal dollars utilized to do those acts, therefore a federal election, an FEC violation happened, which then would make it a federal charge. I'm not sure, as you look back from a legal perspective, why Alvin Bragg took the risk. It's a riskier assessment, as we're seeing here in this trial. It's a riskier thing to prove distinctly that that's the case, versus something of being a business violation where you are paying somebody to do something that they did not do and did something else with it, and whether they reported the taxes on that or not.
I have friends on the left side of the aisle who are Democrats who say it's all about the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement. That's what he's guilty because of that. Well, NDAs are not illegal. And listen, I used to work for a big broadcaster, not Cumulus, a different big broadcaster. I got RIFT, it's reduction of workforce, after 36 years of working for them. It had nothing to do with performance. It was all about, you know what, you're an old white guy, you've worked for us a long time, you make a lot of money, we're going to let you go, and we're going to trim the books. And oh, by the way, we're going to pay you for a year severance so that you don't sue us for age discrimination. And it was called an NDA. So I signed an NDA. An NDA is not illegal.
Correct.
Those happen all day long in business, right?
Yep.
This is an issue of, did he use funds that were meant for the campaign to go campaign in favor of Donald Trump? Were they used to pay somebody off to keep her quiet? It wasn't used. They're claiming the funds that were given to him to use for vote Donald Trump were used to silence somebody, so it didn't come out.
Yeah, therefore, that's why one of the big arguments you see in the media on this one is whether the money was used to keep Stormy Daniels quiet so that it didn't come out before the election, or whether the money was used to protect Melania Trump and Donald Trump's children and family from knowing about the potential affair that took place. That's why they made such a big deal about the distinction, because if it was about protecting the family, then the case of it being election interference would fall flat.
Give me 4 minutes and I'll tell you, he and I will talk a little bit about what happens tomorrow and why that's important, and what happens if the jury deliberates for a long time and can't agree on that. You and I will talk about that. That's BJ Schuerger, a buddy of mine. He's from Ohio. He owns a law firm, Schuerger and Shannarah, run here in Dallas. You can check him out at war4214.com. If you need legal advice or guidance, he can help you, him and his team. You can check him out across social media. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3. I'm Jeff, Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Krok. I got my buddy BJ Schuerger, who is partner in Schuerger Shannarah Law Firm here in Dallas. He's also got offices around the country. How many offices did you say you have?
Yeah, we got 11. Actually, 2 other ones are in Houston and McAllen, Texas as well. Interesting.
So if you need legal guidance, legal advice, you can reach out to BJ and his law firm at war4214.com. It's Schuerger Shannarah.
And come follow us at War for You Law, WARFORYOU Law, LAW, War for You Law, which is on Instagram. Got some interesting content, some stuff to keep everybody entertained.
Let's talk about interesting content. Tomorrow will be an interesting time in New York as the judge in the Trump trial is expected to. Tomorrow, I guess what's supposed to take place are closing arguments from both sides of the attorneys. And that could take all day, right?
Oh,
that could take until Wednesday.
Normally in cases like this, the closing argument is kind of a fait accompli. It's not really, at that point in time, the jury is kind of baked in with the evidence. But I think this is the kind of case where the closing arguments are going to matter. It's like the 12th round of a fight, and it's a draw. and this here's the last round. And I think the closing arguments are going to matter in terms of what they articulate to that jury and understanding the weight that's on that jury's shoulders in terms of the decision that they're about to make.
And after the closing arguments, the judge, Juan Merchan, is expected to spend about an hour instructing the jury on the law governing the case, providing a roadmap for what it can and cannot take into account as he evaluates the Republican former presidential's guilt or innocence. And again, this is not about an NDA. This is not about a non-disclosure agreement. Did he or didn't he have sex with her? This is an issue of federal election law. That's the thing that pisses me off about this whole media coverage is as you watch the traditional media, the talking heads on TV, quite honestly, other than Fox, they'd lead you to believe that this is a case of did he have sex with this woman and paid her to shut up. It's not about that. This is about federal election law. And the talk about BJ, because this really gets a little into the weeds, but it's important, is what will the judge, how can he instruct the jury to follow this, and what do you expect to see and hear on this?
Well, the judge could be very specific in telling the jury, look, any dollars from an election campaign account, no matter what they were used for.
Soft money or hard money, right?
Soft money or hard money, whatever they were used for. He could tell the jury that your decision is to say if money came out of that account and went to anybody to do anything on behalf of a campaign and it was not reported on that campaign finance report, that would be considered.
And that's the key, whether it was reported on the campaign finance report.
And because it was not reported on the campaign finance report, he could direct them to say that would be considered an illegal act. That would be considered on being guilty on one of the accounts.
Even if Trump had no knowledge of that.
Correct.
So if money went out of that account, period, whether he directed it or not.
Well, here's
what if Cohen made that decision on his own?
Well, if Cohen made that decision on his own, right now, the facts or the evidence that I've seen, at least from the news reports that have been broadcast, stated that that Donald Trump paid Michael Cohen in order to protect his family. And that's basically, that has been one of the main underlying arguments of the defense.
You want to weigh in on this? 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. If you have a question for BJ about this case that you've not heard us talk about, this is the time to weigh in and voice your opinion. 800-288-9227.
One of the interesting issues that I've not heard come up, and I don't know if it's in play or not, is where did Michael Cohen pay taxes on this money? Did he file them as a 1099 in terms of him having a
Why would he have to pay taxes on this money? Was it because it was money given to him?
Correct. Well, it was money given to him. So it was money given to him by the campaign. Therefore, did he utilize it as a consulting? Was it paid for consulting services? Because one of the things that is clear is that money did come from the campaign and go to Michael Cohen. So the real underlying issue.
But was it reimbursed? Was it a reimbursable account? Was it reimbursement for something, or was it paid to him as like fees?
That's, if it was paid to him as fees, there's an argument there that Michael Cohen can do whatever he wants with the money. And if he paid taxes on it, then it could be considered a consulting fee.
The interesting thing about this case is this. Everybody's got an opinion on this case, whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump. But the one most important thing to me is it reiterates to us how important it is to serve on a jury if you get called. I don't know how many people I know who've gotten called for jury duty and said, got to write a letter, got to get out of it. I don't want to serve jury duty.
It's ironic as we sit here on Memorial Day, but one of the defining characteristics of our great nation is the fact that on any given day, you can go before 12 peers and argue your case to guilt or innocence. That has been one of the most defining characteristics of our country since the beginning of since 1776. I mean, one of the reasons why we started this country was because we weren't going to bend the knee to the king's justice and not have a jury by the trial of our peers. So as we sit here today, we're fortunate that we're able to even have a trial in front of the jury of our peers. In most countries, this would have been a straight coup d'etat, and they would have, the powers that be would have immediately have taken somebody out. But in this instance, we do have a jury of our peers that are going to listen to the facts, that are going to make a determination about the future of this country and this justice system. But it's just one thing for us to think about on Memorial Day, that our jury system is one of the defining characteristics that makes our country the greatest country in the world.
We got Sean Allen come up in the newsroom in a matter of about 3 minutes. On the other side of that news, you and I will continue the conversation about how many people in that jury, how many have to say yes or no in what they say, and what happens if they don't agree, and what's the time frame for that. And there's 2 alternates, which is interesting. We'll talk about how those 2 alternates come into play too. We're talking to BJ Schuerger Shannarah. I'm Westside Jeff in for Chris Krok, and we'll talk about the instructions to the jury coming up. That's tomorrow in New York.